The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Gretchen Stewart. Gretchen is the Chief Data Scientist at Intel Public Sector. Gretchen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, and I'm delighted to have you. We've got so much to cover in this interview, so let's jump straight in. Gretchen, let's start with yourself, please. Could you give us a bit of an overview of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us up to today as the Chief Data Scientist at Intel Public Sector?
Sure. And thanks so much. I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. So I kind of have an interesting journey. My undergrad was mathematics, and I started to get into the technology industry, really focused on product management and engineering, really defining, honestly, Unix operating systems. And it was a really interesting role, but the part of it that I liked the most was spending time with customers. So during that time, it was really critically important that you, in the role working with customers, had more of an understanding about business. I understood the math and the economics, but so I went back to school and got a master's in business. And then really spent some time working with customers and out in the field, almost I'll call it a human to geek translator. Knew enough about the engineering products that we were developing and that we wanted feedback on, and then spent time with the customers translating their requirements to ensure that we were building products for them. And fast forward, and it's 2015, and everyone is really starting to use and try to figure out how to better use data, not only competitively, but to improve their business value, to improve, in the case of the public sector, faster and better services for citizens, better information for training from the DoD's perspective, the kind of object detection, those kinds of things. And then I realized, okay, I understand the math, but I really need to go back to school and focus on the analytics and the data science. And so did that, and then got to Chief Data Scientist for our public sector, which is a role that I took on in 2019. Most of my time, even with engineering, when it's now 20 years ago, I was really working with a lot of the folks in the federal government. So I do have a good deal of domain knowledge, which I think is really helpful when you're trying to work on data strategy, data projects. It's important to absolutely know what the customer is trying to do and then be able to, as I say, apply the algorithms to the data as opposed to throwing the data at algorithms.
Well, thank you so much for the background. I really appreciate you sharing your journey, and I'm sure you'll touch on it a bit more when you talk about your role in the Intel Public Sector. But you've already highlighted that there's a huge benefit to be gained from being on the sales side, the customer-facing side, while also having some foothold in the technology side, which is why your role as Chief Data Scientist works so well. You mentioned you're now at Intel, but Intel Public Sector specifically. So for the audience listening, can you explain what the Intel Public Sector division is responsible for? And then we can talk about your role as the Chief Data Scientist.
Sure. Intel is an incredibly large organization, but its core business is it's a semiconductor manufacturing company. So we have fabrication plants all over the world. Not that long ago, we announced and broke ground in Ohio. We are, if not the only, one of the only, especially with the volume of capability that Intel has in the United States, which is really important, especially for the public sector customers. And the role that I have in the organization that I'm are the front facing, the people on the street working directly with the customers. So we have I'll call it a dual-headed role. We are absolutely helping deliver Intel's current products to help customers solve problems. But we're also understanding and working with, especially in the public sector, folks like DARPA and IARPA and many of the universities in terms of research to be able to help move things forward not only in the products that we have, but even, for example, in the open source community. People may not know this, but Intel has almost 20,000 software engineers. And if you were to look at the top 5, top 10 software companies, Intel honestly could be there. And it's not that we're designing applications, but we are designing and ensuring that the compilers, the libraries, everything that people who are designing applications have all available to them, and to make it easier for them to be able to develop on Intel products. And the truth is, all the software that we develop also helps if you're going to run on our competitors. We don't say that very often, but it is true that we really understand that all boats can rise and that we can help the entire industry by designing that kind of software to, again, help customers be able to make those decisions faster, whether they're using SAS or Oracle or others, all of whom are optimized and run really well on Intel.
Thank you for that. You mentioned there that your role and much of your team is customer facing. So you're working with various organizations in the public sector to understand what their needs are and then help them execute. You and I spoke previously, and there's so many incredible examples of the work that you're doing. But could you tell us maybe a recent project or a story that would best encapsulate how you and your data science team is working directly with elements of the public sector, various government organizations, and how you're utilizing data science to have an impact within those groups?
We've done some really incredible work with the Department of Justice, which has many agencies underneath it. And I will preface it by saying, while the government, sometimes people think of the government as being slow and lethargic. In this particular case, the government was really smart in 2018 to mandate that every agency has to have a chief data officer. And as an example, the Department of Defense really believes that data is a strategic weapon for, and that they need to better use that data, whether it's data that comes from satellites, i.e. the air, or space, I should say, or air, sea, land, and be able to integrate all of that data to be able to have a just-in-time picture, situational awareness on the battlefield or in training preparation for, say, the battlefield, as an example. But that kind of sets the stage that the public sector, I think, as I said, was really smart to say, hey, we need to think about this. We really do need to create chief data officers. And every agency by the end of 2018, which is now 4 years ago, had a chief data officer. Fast forward to the Department of Justice, we are working on a child trafficking project. And it's a really great example, as I had mentioned earlier, about the need for domain expertise and data science. And you have really smart agents who are working with Interpol and University of the country of Australia, and other of what are called the Five Eyes, so Canada, Europe, etc., and really trying to find these children that are trafficked from wherever. And so they're integrating a lot of information, a lot of data, and these agents are brilliant at what they do, and they absolutely can think in the minds of these, I will say, evil people, and are also able to figure out how to follow the money, that kind of combination of where the people are we seeing faces pop up in some data that we've gotten from CCTV or others. And we're really careful, I want to say, from a facial perspective, that it's not anything that we manipulate in a, again, evil sort of way. It's that we're trying to see if we can find those children. And what we did was embed a couple of our data scientists with these really smart agents, and we're then able to really help them. And truthfully, 6 to 7 or so months later, you had a really, really good group of brilliant forensic scientists who were not data scientists to begin with. So I think that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing, is explaining to people that this shouldn't be scary. You don't have to have a PhD in data science to understand the value of the data. You do have to be data savvy. You do have to understand what the problems are and potentially ways that the data can help you. But there's lots of lower code kind of applications so that you don't have to be a machine learning engineer or a really good coder. That's really helpful. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's also good to understand what you're trying to do. So in the case of that work that we had been doing, I had mentioned to you that they had spotted some children in somewhere they believed in Europe, but they weren't really sure. And they were able to capture some of the voice information and the voice dialects. And they said that those voices really sounded like they were potentially from Northern Europe, say maybe Romania or somewhere like that. And again, I'm not trying to besmirch any country, but just that it was a different dialect, but yet it also was Spanish. And so they were trying to figure it out and ultimately doing some research, understood where that particular population was settling in different places in Spain. And were able to triangulate that with some pictorial data of buildings and literally were able to then reach out to that government and have folks cower, or I should say, drive through certain parts of Spain and found something that looked very much like that particular building. And then were able to really match that and then basically did a raid and found 10 to 12 children that were indeed in this corrugated tin kind of warehouse in Spain. And it was all from leveraging natural language processing, thinking about machine learning, multivariate correlation. And it was, again, these really smart agents who were leveraging the data science that they had learned, spending some time with a data scientist from Intel. And these are the kinds of things that we want to do and that we really, it's the kind of impact that matters to us.
Amazing.
We've also created an AI for workforce, global education program for K to 12, and we call it AI for everywhere. And there's a global impact conference that we now have done second year in a row, where literally high school students, college students, people with brilliant ideas come in and pitch. And there are winners and they get mentors, and literally it could be 10,000, 50,000, some amount of money to really be able to help those programs in the work that they're doing. And it's always connected to making a global impact. So it could be around climate change or equity and or human improvement or any of the kinds of things that the UN has as their kind of 20 global impact, equal justice kinds of things that they focus on. And it's just, for me, it's really, I feel like truthfully I've landed in my dream job of a company that wants to make a difference and that I get hard, gnarly problems every day that challenge me.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
I want to spend some time now talking about the investment that Intel have made into data science and AI and how that's impacting your team currently, and then also the roadmap for the next 12 to 24 months. I know it's something you and I spoke about previously, but can you walk us through just how big an investment data science and AI will be for Intel in the coming years and what that's going to mean for not just your group now, but the headcount investment over the years to come?
Intel's a lot bigger than most people think. So for one thing, it is one of the largest semiconductor companies on the planet, but it also has multiple focuses in terms of current and future product advancements, not only ours, but others. And I share that because part of Intel has an entity called Intel Capital. And so it's like an investment part of our company. It's like a venture capital. And last year, they invested over $1.5 billion in startup companies. And they've done that for a number of years, honestly, ones that you've heard of, like VMware, a number of years ago. And we have invested in AI companies like DataRobot, like H2O AI, C3 AI, a number of different AI, machine learning, deep learning, analytic companies. And it is billions, and we will continue to do that. So that's the Intel Capital part of the company. And sometimes those investments or what we are finding turn into us purchasing them. As an example, Habana has two products, it has multiple products, but the products that we have today are ones that do a number of machine learning and deeper learning algorithms better than anything else on the planet. And that honestly goes to our, I'll call it overall strategy. The first is we really do lead with software, which I know is lead with it's a manufacturing company and we're all about processors and network cards and silicon photonics and you name it. But we are really clear that the best way to be able to take advantage and the best way to solve problems is with applications. So it is about solving the problem, and there's software and attached to that. And so we want to make sure that it's optimized to be able to provide the most accurate, the best information as quickly as possible. And we do that by the second piece is I'll call it our fit for purpose hardware. So we have Xeon, which is our workhorse CPU, and you can do a lot from both training and inference on that product. But we also know that we need to think about the fact that there are constraints, low power, small form factors, things like that, that therefore you really do need to have a fit for purpose design. And so we have multiple other products that work from an AI perspective. It could be a field programmable gate array or FPGA as we'll talk about it. And then it's like Habana and others that we will continue to develop, including even neuromorphic computing, which is really that blend of computer science, neuroscience, and electrical engineering, and quantum. So all of those are things that are either ones that we're producing today or a part of our research, but they are all absolutely very focused on ensuring that we solve the problems and that we scale across all of our partners. So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you don't really, for the most part, most customers that I work with don't buy directly from Intel. They buy from, in the Department of Defense case, a Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman. So that means we're selling to them or to their suppliers. And, or I should say, they're maybe buying something from an original equipment manufacturer like an HP or a Dell or any one of those kinds of companies. So that's really the influence part of the job that I have, where I'm really working hard to ensure that we have the right products to solve what the customer wants, and then they have the choice of how and where and who to purchase their products from.
Gretchen, I want to finish on talking about the opportunity for people to come and join you and the team at Intel Public Sector. And you give us a bit of an overview of what the headcount across the group is now and where you expect it to be in, say, 18, 24 months from now. What opportunities are there going to be for people to come and join you on this mission? And when you're speaking to people about the environment, the culture, the team, what is it that you tell them that gets them excited enough to join Intel over some of the other great companies out there?
Oh, that's a really awesome question. And I have to say, the first thing I usually lead with, which I didn't when we were first starting, is that I am a gay technical female that is very comfortable with who I am. But working for Intel is honestly the best company that I've ever worked for in terms of being inclusive and diversive and understanding and having the kind of benefits that are available and the flexibility to look at part-time programs at universities or a lot of additional training and those kinds of things. But for us, the big focus right now is really those manufacturing plants. So we are going to have at least 3,000 plus new job openings in Ohio to be running those fabrication plants. And there are lots of analytic jobs in terms of what are the yields? How can we get the yields better? Are there different mixture? What we need to be doing? Should we have these particular manufacturing lines be focusing on Xeon, where this one is maybe doing our core products for the client? Or we are starting to sell those services, foundry services, and getting other companies, Microtech, I think, is one of them, and others, where we're going to be building their products here in the United States. And so how do you do that? Those are really interesting optimization, constraint satisfaction kind of problems that data and analytics are absolutely key to being able to run and work efficiently 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on today. We were saying before the interview that we could probably do a series of podcasts and still not run out of stuff to discuss. But I'm so glad you came on because there's so much to take from this. Firstly, your own journey and how you've landed the role of chief data scientist, having had the role front office, working on the sales side and getting your background in technology. And then obviously learning about Intel public sector, some of the incredible work that you do, maybe educating the audience on just how software, AI and data focused Intel is, other than its primary business as a semiconductor, and just the investments that you're making into AI and data science. Sounds like an incredible place to work. It really does. And for anyone listening to this, please follow Intel public sector, as I'm sure there'll be career opportunities in the year ahead. And Gretchen, we look forward to having you back on the show again really soon and learning more from you. So thank you so much for
Oh,
today.
absolutely. The conversation has been terrific. I really appreciate it. And as I said, I have landed in my dream job.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.